Thank you very much. We'll take statements from the floor first, and then we will have the panelists or whoever, the panelists try to respond. Yes, please. Okay. I think there was somebody here. Yes, introduce yourself.
Yes. I'm Queen Quet, Chieftess of the Gullah Geechee Nation, and I'm also representing the International Human Rights Association for American Minorities. I wanted to first address the declaration as a tool of reference, good practices, and comparative experiences, because just prior to coming here, I was a person who was sued along with my family for protecting a sacred burial ground of Gullah Geechees that are in my family. That is often considered a quote-unquote slave burial ground on one of our sea islands in the Gullah Geechee Nation. And the person who actually was attempting to desecrate said ground by trying to build a house on this area sued our family because the media did a story and stated that we were saying he was actually trying to build there when he said he was trying to build there. So the case went on 3 years. But during the time that I was on the stand, I utilized this declaration as well as the Gullah Geechee Nation's constitution and invoked the issue that we are a linguistic and ethnic minority, and then also used a law that I helped to get passed in the U.S. called the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Act, also as a reference, as a tool, so that it is now the first time ever in history that the terms Gullah Geechee are in a case law now to protect a, quote, graveyard in all of the United States. That has never happened before. And so I believe, again, I agree with everything that had been said, but it definitely is up to us to make sure that these are the precedents, because what I found more often than not is that our own people don't understand setting a precedent themselves. They always feel that you have to refer to something that someone else already did, but that they don't understand when you do it, you set the precedent, like this forum that is now here and we're participating. And then my only other thing was a question, especially because of the legal issues, was when you have transnational identities, cultural identities, there's a complexity in enslavement, a complexity in forced migration, a complexity in resistance, and a complexity in the use of the term indigenous. Gullah Geechees are called Gullah Geechee, we're called Black Seminole or Afro Seminole, and then we're called Muskogee. And that depends on whether you're on the coastline, where some of us are, some migrated to reservations and live there, and some are in Mexico. But they're still all the same people. And so we feel we should be in the indigenous forum and in the minority forum. How do we then deal with that complexity, because they then tell us, well, you're not really defined as indigenous, even though your culture evolved in North America.
Thank you very much. These are all fascinating issues, and congratulations for using the declaration successfully.
Thank you.
Really excellent.
Thank you. I plan to do it again.
I'd love to see the case. Yes. I'd love to see the judgment.
On the question of genocide, ethnocide, well, I just want to remind you that the declaration itself calls on states to protect the existence of minorities, which already is a protection against both genocide and ethnocide. And they said, in addition, encourage conditions for the promotion of their identity, which is a way of promoting, or at least to preventing ethnocide. So it is implicit in the declaration. And secondly, we have to relate these two different concerns, prevention of discrimination on the one hand and protection of minorities on the other hand, and find the appropriate combination of the two. I was very much fascinated by what Mr. Nettleford talked about, particularly this question of being politically a majority but culturally a minority. And this, of course, is a much broader question of being recognized in all our heterogeneity as being a full and equal human being. So that's why in my work I've been very much concerned with, on the one hand, making sure that there is equality in the common domain, and at the same time a space for pluralism of the particular identity, with its various implications, including that of protection of a graveyard, which is a good example of how it's important to protect an identity.
Thank you, but of course.
Please, I crave your indulgence. I'm afraid. Thank you, Professor Eide. But, you know, the truth of the matter is that I find it extremely difficult, even from some of my most sophisticated cosmopolites, for them to understand that all great civilizations are the result of cross-fertilization. And if we do not understand this, we are in trouble. All this nonsense about you belong. I like to tell my former mother country, England, that look, even you were hyphenated, you were Anglo-Saxon. You know, and that in fact, you just didn't come up there, you know, from somewhere. That we are all really the products of cross-fertilization. And in fact, one of the great things about the Caribbean is that with the different people from West Africa and the Congo coming to the different tribes had to mix and cross-fertilize. So that when we say Africa, which is a European invention incidentally, because Africa is very complex itself. And what I am thinking of are textured human beings who will provide the 21st century with precisely what we want, that all of us can live together than simply side by side. And that's what this whole thing has got to be, without downplaying the importance of using the thing of the discussion, the discourse of minority, majority as a tool. As a tool for what? To make something. What are we making? What are we trying to fabricate? This is really how I like to feel that where I come from, we are seeing life.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Professor Eide, also for the earlier comments.
I'll just make it very short. I think while on this issue about indigenous and minorities, it is very important, I think, it's quite clear. And just to follow up from what Mr. Nettleford was saying, it is really us who has to be clear who we are. In the UN, of course, they have their working definition and so on, but as indigenous peoples, I think it has been quite clear, and I think we know who we are. And the problems come when there is a definition that in defining us, and I think that is the problem. So we have to be, you have to know, and I often see that in the context of Asia, that is the problem, that we are being put into different who we are. So it's important to know where the indigenous and the minority and where we are. I find it that if you're talking about your rights, you do it wherever you can. That's right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. 3 quick points. One, again, about this minorities versus indigenous people thing. Especially indigenous people, they don't like to be called minorities, whereas I think it shouldn't be or, it should be and. So you can rely on the indigenous people's rights and you can rely on the minority rights. So as Professor Eide said and other people say, please do. If you can, just make use of whatever there is.
How are the children do? Yeah, we did in Geneva for all of this short time, but we did it at the UN and things like that for the minority forum and things. Look, you have plenty children be there for all around the world and things like that. All kind of different culture and things like that. The cracky teeth with the same thing. See, writing thing, half of you protect. So, 100 children, we got plenty things for share. We're going to be coming up here, putting the show with the Gullah Geechee Nation news and things like that for all 100 children that get it this year. We had some of the people from the U.S. Congress be there and all of that thing. And people around the world be so glad if you know, say we the did it. And they represent who we do. As the Gullah Geechee Nation. Because plenty of people never yet who we the forward they did now, you know what I'm saying? So this year we're one for history, one for we story, and everything like that. And we thank God for the chance for there. But we going out now for look around a little bit more upon these your mountain and thing because you know thing up, you're high up like this year, you ain't flat down like we your 100 children are there now. But we're so glad for that have one more time for crack my teeth with you. So me healing you, everything going well. We pray to God, 100 children stick with me. You know this year the Queen Quet. Peace and blessing everybody.